story this morning? I see. How is everyone this morning? Are you good? You look great. You all look great. You all look so awake. Yes, I see Candela's picture. So, I wonder if this is a new story or an old story. Think it's an old story? Old? A regular story. Well, we should have a look and see what kind of story it is, don't you think?
I think it's going to be an old story. I think it's just going to be a story.
Just a story.
Just a story.
Oh. This is not only a new story, this is a true story. This is a story about this family. This is Carlos and Malena and their 4 children. And they live in Guatemala. Have you heard of Guatemala? No? Let's just leave that, Catherine. We'll get to it in a minute. Guatemala is a long way from here. Have you heard of Mexico? Yeah. Well, if you went to Mexico and then kept going further, you would eventually get to Guatemala. And so let's hear this story. So this is Guatemala. This is Guatemala. This is a land where there's lots of rain. And yeah, this is very soft, isn't it? And this is a land where most of the people are very, very poor and they work very hard. And so in Guatemala, there is this little village where Carlos, who we saw in the picture, was born. And Carlos is a farmer. He farms coffee beans. You know what coffee is, right? Yeah. So the thing with coffee beans, and I have to actually go and get something now because it wouldn't fit in the box. So can I step between you two? Coffee beans grow in the mountains. They need cold temperatures to grow. And so away from the village, Carlos had a coffee farm. And it was a long way from the village, and he didn't have a car or anything. If he needed supplies or if his children got sick and he had to go to the hospital, he had to put them in a cart and go down this really steep road down to the village. And so it was up on the mountain that he grew coffee. And coffee is called coffee cherries. Okay, it's squishy, yeah. Let's just leave them on the tree. And Carlos and Malena and all of his children had to work keeping the coffee farm going. And the reason, and so the children weren't allowed, couldn't go to school because they had too much work to do. And that was because he wasn't paid enough for his beans when he harvested them every year. There was barely enough money to have enough food to eat. And Carlos grew really good quality beans. Can you smell those?
Are those real beans from his farm?
They're not from his farm, I don't think, but they're real beans from Guatemala. He grew really good coffee beans. But the problem is that when the man in the big truck came to get his beans, Carlos didn't have any choice but to give them to him for whatever he was willing to pay. And this is what he would pay him. Just a few cents for all of those beans. And so Carlos could not send his children to school, he could not get any kind of vehicle, and he dreamed about having a motorcycle so that he could go quickly down to the village if he needed anything. So, one year, Carlos was working his farm and he heard about a new plan. And the new plan was that in the village, a new building went up, and it was called a cooperative. Now that's a really big word. But what that means is that all the farmers like Carlos could bring their coffee beans to this place, to this building, and all those beans together, the people that ran this would make sure that they paid them more money for the beans. So instead of just getting a few pennies, this year, Carlos got way more money for his coffee. Way more money. And his coffee went into bags like this that were called fair trade. And they were called fair trade because Carlos and his family, let's just leave the money. Carlos and his family now were getting a fair amount of money. And they could send their children to school. Their children didn't have to work in the coffee fields. And Carlos, after a few years, had enough money for a motorcycle. And now, in addition to running, okay, let's be careful because we don't want Carlos to fall off the mountain. Now, besides his coffee farm, because of the motorcycle, he was now the ambulance for the village. So if anyone up in the mountains got sick, he could put them on the motorcycle and get them into the hospital really fast. If anyone needed food or water because they had run out, he could run down to the village and bring it up. And he was able to do way more than he could ever do before. He was the hero of the mountains. I wonder how Carlos felt when he got his motorcycle. Do you think he was happy? Excited? Oops, Malena just fell off the mountain. And I wonder how his children felt when they didn't have to work in the coffee field but could now go to school. I wonder how they felt. Happy? So that's our story about Carlos. And Carlos is still running his motorcycle up and down the mountain in Guatemala. So we're going to sing the song we've been singing for a few weeks. And I would really like all of you to help me with it because we're going to do it today in 4 parts. This side of the congregation is going to sing with me. This side is going to sing with Fran, and then the choir is going to do 2 more parts. So do you want to come out and sing with me? Oh, Great Earth. We'll sing it all the way through once, and then we'll do it as a round. Ready?
For animals can hear the rhythm.
So we're going to
Thank you.
invite you to follow the candle out to Children's Church. So just hold on for a minute until we get the candle lit.